The kind of soft, dreamy aesthetic of this shot reminds me of Barry Lyndon. It feels like they are just going with the illumination which is in the space and not bringing much or maybe even anything in. And that means that everything is wide open, perhaps, to get the shot to be able to get exposure within this location. Maybe they liked the look of it. Maybe they didn't want to try and fight the vibe of the space by bringing lighting in. There's quite a lot of stuff going on with all these practicals, and you can kind of see it's soft around them. It's a little bit hazy. It's a little bit milky. It's not perfect. There looks like there's some aberrations maybe that's the mirrors. It's hard to tell. There's definitely a lack of colour fidelity, I feel, in this shot. It does feel like they just used the practical sources. It's not as sumptuous. They're not getting as much out of them. Maybe it's because these lights don't render as high on TCLI or CRI. Maybe they're LED fixtures. Maybe they're tungsten. Maybe they're not. But it does feel like either the camera is stressing a bit or the lighting isn't giving them as much to work with. But I thought it was just an interesting observation. Also feels like they got a bit of a kind of magenta-y look to them down their backs, just here. It just feels, and on the back of her head actually. Oh, and him. Yeah, it feels like there's a window. Yeah, now I look at it, in the glasses down there. And there's a window in the back there, which is consistent with the colour that we're seeing on them. So yeah, I feel like there's a magenta push, sort of cyan magenta, into the backs just there, which is washing out a little bit and fighting with the vibe in the room, which is very goldy greeny. But yeah, that is just that. They progress through. Indeed, now we can see in the back here, all of this is their sort of daylight cyan 5600, 6000-y kind of blueness coming in to this very warm environment that we're in just here, with all the kind of greeny, yellowy, orangey tones going on. And his glasses, again, in his glasses there is something, and it feels quite big, so I'm going to call that as being some kind of fixture, because I doubt that any of the practical fixtures in this location would be big enough to give a reflection that big in his glasses. And if you look at the practicals, they're all kind of lots of smaller things. So there's something up here, it's lighting him. I'm going to level. This shot feels a bit weak to me, just in terms of what the camera's giving you and what you're giving it. So it doesn't feel like the right lighting choice is being made here. The image feels thin. We've got this blueness in the back and this richness in the front. It just feels like we could do something with it more to give it a bit more depth. Everything is a bit, as Bilber says, not enough butter spread over too much bread. It's just not quite feeling as rich and sumptuous as perhaps it deserves to, with the location, with the opulence that is intended to be there. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me, and that's that. Now they sit down and begin to have a conversation. Immediately you are going to see, because I've called it out so many times already now, this light going on. Immediately you're going to see shooting down straight onto the table. This is their playbook. This is what they are all about with the table scenes. It is top lit, coming down. Matthew McConaughey is catching a lot from this direction. So you can see down the side of his face there, I'll do it in red, we've got this really bright highlight, and then he's going off to much more of a shadow all the way down his side. Our guy here, I can never remember his name, is catching something from this side, just edging him all down there. And his hand, I have to do this in red, is on fire. His hand is just catching the full force of that top light. And you're going to see this quite a lot actually when characters move through those lights. They do overexpose, they are just blown out and become the brightest thing in the whole frame. Window's doing what it does, she's catching a similar light to Matthew McConaughey, Mickey's character, and they're catching consistent light with that. So It feels like something's over here pushing, whether it's the window or whether that's getting an extra push from a light fixture just off, probably up here-ish. I would want to take it from the same direction as the window so that it felt like it was coming from there. He is catching something actually in the other direction. I'm going to take everything off for a moment and just draw for him. We have got something, let's see, if I draw a line off from his glasses here. Yeah, to there. So there is a fixture up here which is doing something for him. All the way down. And it is fairly hard, it feels like. I mean, his glasses, you can see the shadow. They're pretty close to his face and it does fall off rapidly. But it doesn't feel flattering. It's not a nice, soft, rappy light. It's just almost illumination on his face. And because his hand is playing so hot in the scene as well, his face just feels a little bit out of ratio. Especially, and because he's talking, and you got this window, everything's a bit off kilter. This could be intentional, and I always come back to the potential narrative argument for doing something. Maybe it isn't meant to feel quite right because this is a bit of a tense meeting, there's stuff going on. But again, I look at it and I go, it doesn't feel like we're getting enough in his face. It doesn't feel like we're prioritizing getting a good light on him. It just feels like we're throwing light onto the table because that's what we do. It's kicking up enough and then we get a little bit on his face from something else, but conflicted I am. Okay, and then Matthew McConaughey is getting some hard light. Now this coming straight in just here, like this. And you can see all down his forehead just here. It's picking up sort of specular, even on his chin. And it's bluish. It isn't balanced out to be rich, warm skin tones. It's got a bluish quality to it. You see the shadow along the side of his nose just there? You can definitely catch the catch light in his eyes. Got a lot of flat on kind of looking lighting, that hard light on his skin, making it shimmer a bit. It always seems like he's got like a fine mist of sweat. Maybe he does, but I feel like it's because of the reflective quality of that light and the hard light being a little bit more specular and picking that out somewhat. We do have hair light coming in, that's catching his hair all around the back just there. Motivated, I mean there's stuff in the background that feels like it could be kicking light in, there's all kinds of highlights and things, that's fine. But he does feel like he's also getting something a little bit more toppy along there as well. Skin has a slightly magenta-y look to it, and I feel like that's because of this hard light. It does, what this is for me is an HMI out here booking straight into his face. It doesn't immediately give me a sense there's much diffusion going on. It feels like it's either an HMI through something like a 4x4 silk, but a long way away, like outside the window, coming through a 4x4 silk. So it's been softened, but it isn't a soft light because it's quite far away. It's my 2 cents on it. I don't have any behind the scenes, don't have any way to prove it, but I mean, look at the shadow down his nose there, and this highlight and these highlights just around his forehead. It is a unflattering hard light, and the way it kind of pushes through the hair in his beard. What am I doing? I'm drawing a beard on Matthew McConaughey. Okay, the way the light pushes through though is interesting because it's hard light source, because it's coming in like that. It feels sparser. It just changes the character of his face and the way that it sits on his face almost. It's weird. Again, I'm not necessarily a fan of it. Narrative arguments aside. Cut back to them, see some bits in his glasses. Not going to make too much of this, we'll just keep going through. Again, very kind of shiny, specular, sweaty look going on because of that light that's coming in. Nothing else to call out, it is all fairly consistent with what we've been saying. In the restaurant, this guy's about to do some poisoning, spoilers. And we've got this goldy kind of orangey light. Feels almost sodium vapor-esque. Just catching, it's catching on his head as well, just there. Catching on his shirt. You can see it's getting that kind of orangey goldy look all the way down in his collar. So that's coming in from this side. And it feels like quite a big source, the way that it's working in those pots and pans. It's just off up here. And it isn't this. I mean, there's a practical up here, probably, unless they've dressed in like a quasar tube or something. This, I reckon this is a window, but it doesn't necessarily mean that isn't light that's been added in. And then we've got this tube. Maybe it's a practical that was there, but it feels like something a filmmaker might dress in to give a bit of light. We have a general push coming from this direction of light. And you can see that just catching in all the stuff down here. And actually also on the edge of his face a bit, although that could be this, just boosting onto edge him just there. Yeah, not too much to say, but I don't know where that orangey yellowy light is motivated from. Okay, tabletop. And we know if it's tabletop, we have to have our top light, and sure enough, look at this exploding in the frame. Now, it could be the atmosphere they're using, or maybe they've actually got some physical filtration in there, but you can see this sort of glow around the paper. That could be done a number of ways. It could even be added in post, potentially. But yeah, that is boosting down with the paper, and you can see in his glasses, that is just kicking up into his glasses, bang. So immediately, his face is being illuminated a lot by what is happening on this table, and this is also kicking into other things. Now there's more light coming down, and there's stuff that is playing in the background. We've got call back to that kind of yellowy, goldy, orangey light just there. A couple of little practicals going on. I'm going to skip through these quite quickly because it cuts to a number of different angles. Soft light on him. Could be the table playing a bit, but it feels a little bit more like it's coming in toppy, like this. Maybe not quite that toppy, actually. From over here, like that. Yeah. And then that's just playing on his face. Something up there. It's all good. Next. Really bright again in shot. That's just all of this just here, just exploding off. Quite a hard shadow on the remote just there. Now, a couple of things to analyze here. We have something coming in the background just there. That's all kind of daylight vibe blue, which could legit just be a window doorway coming in, pushing in like that. In here, it is richer and warmer. And this is kind of what I mean when I say, in some of those shots, the character's skin doesn't feel like it's getting enough goodness for the camera sensor to be able to do it justice. Here, we do have concessions to the skin looking good, but we still have the blue and stuff happening that's pale in the background, feeling like it's outside. But this works better for me. Our guy here is catching a little bit of light down the side of his face, so he does stay well defined. We can see that he's there, remembering that geography, saying that he's in shot and he is present, going off down this side, which is all cool. Matthew McConaughey is mostly catching shadow on this side, and we've already established he's being illuminated by something off up this way, but then also this table is bouncing, and you can see the catch light. You can just see that catching in his eyes. But he is definitely getting something on the top of his sort of cheekbone just here. Because he's getting that on the top of his cheekbone, it can't only be this down light that's bouncing off the table that's illuminating him. He's catching something from above as well. And we've got this cool reflective light happening down the side of our guy's chin and cheek, all down there. But it feels like, again, he is catching something from the top because it goes off around there like that. He is not just being illuminated from the table, but all that reflective light, again, imagine the angle coming up, bouncing off, coming towards the camera. It is that shallow angle that is going to give you that reflective, glistening kind of shiny quality to skin. And indeed, in the next shot, we see a similar situation on Matthew McConaughey. And actually, to be honest, between these two, we've changed angles a little bit. So now this post pillar that was in the background just here and this picture frame actually jump. So when we jump across to this frame, you see that now that post is on this side of him and the picture frame's behind his head. Now because of that, we're catching something into the side of his face. It's a little bit rich and golden, but still coming in that shallow angle, reflecting across, giving this cool edge down there, like that, and like that. Very good for sculpting jawlines and just creating a little bit of shape. And like I say, adding more definition back into a face where you don't just want it to go off to black, or you don't want it just to be a flat sea of face. You can have a highlight in there using that technique. In his eye, you can definitely see something going on with the table. But then also, if you look at the top, just up there, there is another source coming in. There's something else playing, and our guy in the background is still catching the same kind of light as before. So they go back and forth, back and forth. We get closer in, get to see more of those catch lights. But nothing changes. You might finesse it a bit, maybe, but it feels like they're using the same light, same technique, so that's all good. Again, same with him. You can really see in his eye now that catch light at the bottom, but then also something a little bit higher up and something off to the side, giving him this edge down the side of his face too. And now this side is going off to shadow. Now whether he's moved a bit or whether actually they've changed something, because before he was getting an edge down there when we're shooting over his shoulder, which wouldn't be present if it's lit like this, but hey, that's fine. Craziness ensues. We're cutting to a wide angle of the table shot, and you can see just how bright that is in there. It is definitely the brightest thing in frame. Interesting because you don't see it too much. A lot of filmmakers now avoid having something that bright and distracting in their shots. To be honest, I did notice it when I watched the film, but it didn't draw me out of the scene because there was so much going on. But look at how bright it is. It's really, really playing. Cool, and we are back. He's looking down. We have a few of these shots. We've already done the one where he's looking down with the gun. Here we have a very similar situation. I believe he does have a gun again, and we've got this super cool reflected light. And he looks a little bit wild and a little bit rattled. The way the light is playing on his face and the texture and his skin, all of this around here. Now there's something else coming back up, and it does feel like it could be the table just bouncing up into his skin just there. But yeah, he's got a lot of texture and a lot of shape to it. And this is obviously coming in like that. But we also have toplight doing his hair, making sure that's all illuminated down his shoulder, and even an edge along here so that he cuts out from the background, and then a slight red push with some of the lighting that's in the back there. So even when it's quite dark, we do have layers and contrast and things which are going to help you pick out where you should be looking. That is going to wrap it up for this installment. Next time we are rewinding and looking at some of the scenes from early in the film in Raymond's house, and we're going to catch our first glimpse of one of my favourite characters played by Hugh Grant.